Let me try. Okay, so we'll take a look into the second hypostyle hall. We're standing in the hall near the doorway, and we're looking out into the first hypostyle, into the second hypostyle hall. And where the light is, that's the entrance and the exit to the temple. So we'll stand near the door and we'll look around the hypostyle hall. Hypostyle hall means it's the hall of many columns. And you can see there are many columns. And it's like a forest or a papyrus swamp where Heru would go to hide from Set so that Set doesn't catch him and gouge out his eyes or maim him or kill him. And so you can see you have 9 columns on the left and they're matched on the right. And there is a central walkway where there are no columns because that's where you walk and where the procession of the boat would take place in ancient times. So would have the priests and priestesses coming into the temple in procession. So they'll be walking in a line. And they would be carrying the boat of Heru. And he would walk in on the shoulders of the priests. Usually it's the priests that carry the boats because they're heavy. They have the shrine, it's a boat and they have the shrine on top of the boat. So mostly it's the priest that would carry the boat. And in ancient times, these light fixtures would not be here. All of this is artificial light. There's nothing wrong with artificial light, but it's saying that this isn't a modern addition to the temple. So it would be much darker in here, and they would use lamps and torches to light your way as they're walking into the temple. And the only light will come through the ducts in the ceiling. As you can see when you look up to the ceiling. This is one of the most complete, if not the most complete temple in all of Egypt. Meaning it has the least amount of damage. Now that we have looked around, taken in the sights and the feel of the temple of Heru Behudet, this is a temple to Heru Behudet. Now we'd like to stand still for a moment to recite some words of power to Heru. Duara Sara Sant Heru. Duara Sara Sant Heru. Duara Sara Sant Heru. Duara Sara Sant Heru. Om Mati Makeru. Om Mati Makeru. Om Mati Makeru. Heru Makeru. Heru Makeru. Heru Makeru. Heru Makeru. Now we'll bring up our document. So trying to make it so that we can have a visual throughout the whole program. So we'll see how it works. Okay. And here's the boat of the inner shrine. And here's the shrine. This is the Holy of Holy room, and there's a shrine inside where the statue of Heru would be placed. And during the procession, it will be taken out of this shrine and will be placed in the boat, and the boat will be taken to the procession and then brought back. And here was a glimpse of the second hypostyle hall. And you going further, you make it into the first hypostyle hall, and that was the one that we were in. You see, this is a temple of Luxor, and you can see how dilapidated parts of it is. And in the Heru temple, you don't have such damage, which is very good. So we've covered quite a bit. Yes, okay. So we are to conclude with this line. And I think we're there now. We're going to talk a little bit about the site of the fiends and how to become the chief of them, how to become the ruler of them. And here we're not talking about a physical site of seeing that you're supposed to see something with your eyes. We're talking here about the ascertainment, being able to recognize the negative afflictive states and emotions, to be aware of them, and to apply the counter force to them. The act of awareness alone, of recognizing, is an act of counter force to the negative afflictive states and conditions. And we're talking about Ma NF Sebal, to see the fiends, the enemies, which are the enemies of the soul, essentially. If you merely become aware of them, let's say anger or stupidity, or not stupidity, but let's say acting in a childish manner. And it happens, and you recognize, you said, that was pretty childish, and I shouldn't be acting in that way, and let me, in that situation, next time, let me act more mature. That alone is counteracting it, is uprooting it. It's a counter force, as opposed to acting childish and have no awareness, no ascertainment, no sight, no vision of. It just happens, and you take it as, that's me, that's just the way I am. And that is not having sight of the enemies. That's not having vision of them, or being able to ascertain them. And what is necessary is, but that's one level. That's I say a foundational, basic level of the practice. Another level is being able to ascertain them and not enact them, the negative afflictive states and conditions. And if you ascertain the negative afflictive state and condition when it arises and do not act on it, then that is a deeper process of uprooting. And to do that, you have to become separate from the negative afflictive states and conditions. You have to, in other words, you have to see yourself as separate from them. And the term here, "cur," means to fall down or to throw down or to cause to fall. Cur here, the man bending over with his arms down towards the ground, means to fall down. So what the text is saying is that to cause the enemies to fall down, you need to see them. You need to have vision of them, or else they'll run ramshad, they'll run rampant in your personality, and you'll not be able to control them. And you have to try to control them. You have to start controlling the negative afflictive states and conditions. And in the beginning, that takes effort. But if you try to control and they still overcome you, the idea is not to self-recriminate. In the teachings of Ma'at, this is called eating your heart. It is to recognize that it happened and to apply the corrective action next time, or have the idea, the intent to apply the corrective action. And if it doesn't happen next time, and if it happens again, you are unable to apply the corrective action, what's necessary is sustained effort over time. So it's not about self-recrimination. Look at me, how dumb and stupid I am, I did this thing. Because that way of psychologically processing the event is actually bolstering the ego, although within your personality, you are positing that you are negating the ego, but actually you're making it stronger by self-recrimination. Because essentially, you are not your negativities. Your negativities are an expression of your mind that has been degraded over time. But you shouldn't recriminate yourself over that either, because essentially you are not mind either. But you want a healthy, clean, purified mind. And the idea is to be able to recognize the negative afflictive states and conditions. The higher level, then not engaging in it. At that level, you're suppressing. So instead of punching the person in the face, you're suppressing. You're pushing it down and not allowing yourself to punch the person in the face, or to act childish or silly or whatever. And so you're holding that negative negative emotion back. You're suppressing, but you're also replacing. So in the case of punching the person in the face, you're holding yourself back from punching the person in the face. Now you're acting in a more humane, congenial manner. So you're replacing the anger with congeniality, even in the face of conflict. And the other way, a situation arises where you need to be more mature and serious. You're holding back your silliness and you're trying to exude a more air of maturity. So you're replacing what you have suppressed so that your mind can become accustomed to or retrained, is a better way of putting it. Your mind can become retrained to the new way of its new and its higher, new and higher way of acting and being. It's another level. A higher level than suppressing and replacing is seeing and dissolving without suppressing and replacing. But you have to go through these stages. So what happens after you have suppressed and replaced for a long time, or for however long it takes, you grow into the capacity where you can identify and dissolve. And when you identify and dissolve, it's less effort than suppressing and replacing, because the mind is more powerful and you're doing it with greater wisdom. And the highest application of wisdom with regards to negative afflictive states and conditions is that they're illusory. So you can dissolve them. And then the higher level from there is that they don't arise at all. Or if they arise for a very brief period and you're not controlled by it. And you have to realize that even sages have moments where remnants of negative states and afflictive emotions arise, but it's very tenuous and it doesn't last long. So in other words, a normal person can stay angry at somebody for days or months. Whereas in the same situation, a sage will experience anger for 10 seconds. And then it's over. It's done with. And it's like if you were to draw a line in water. You draw the line in water, but it comes back to its original state very quickly. So you can use that kind of mental imagery. Whereas someone who is negative and angry, they're drawing they're drawing a line in concrete, in wet concrete, and then it gets hardened. And then they have to soften themselves. And your personality, especially new aspirants, and on the male side, may have somewhat struggle with this. They may come into the teachings being a gentle person to begin with, or they may come into the teachings being kind of harsh, and they find themselves being becoming more gentle. And it's like, what's going on with me? Why am I becoming more gentle? I'm supposed to be a man. I'm not supposed to be soft and gentle and caring and with light touch and things like that. They think that they have to be manly and robust all the time, because that's how the ego has cultivated the male personality. So you have to be able to allow yourself to transform, and you have to be able to understand that your gentleness is not something wrong or wrong with you, or that you you have kind of a uh, especially for those who start out being a little gentle, start thinking, well, why am I so gentle all the time? Why am I this way all the time? And now I'm getting to teachings, I'm really getting soft, and I'm not hard, and you have to realize that that is a positive development in your personality. Now, if someone comes at you with a bat or a knife or a stick, you're not gonna, oh, I'm becoming a sage, I can't defend myself. Hit me with, you're not gonna do that either. Or if you see a child in the street and a car is coming, you're gonna say, hey, Johnny, come on. You're going to yell at him, hey, get out of the street, whatever. Hey, you're using the emotions instead of being controlled by them. You are applying them as opposed to them working in an instinctual manner. And you're developing a more calm, pleasant disposition about yourself. And you do that by being able to see the enemies and cause them to fall. And the teaching says they fall on the earth, herta. Herta meaning fall on the earth or fall to the earth. And what that means is that the when the afflictions fall and they fall on the earth, it means that they are falling to a condition where they cannot, it's difficult for them to get up again. And that's what happens in your personality. Your negative afflictions are so suppressed and become so attenuated because the suppression allows them to become attenuated. And when they become attenuated, it's difficult for them to rise up again. It's difficult for them to rise up again. And they might still rise up, but they're not going to rise up with the same energy, the same force, because not only are you attenuating the enemies, but you're also purifying your ego at the same time. So it becomes, you lose the channel of acting through your ego or acting egoistic. And that is if that happens, that's a very positive development. So your personality changes, your personality becomes transformed. And you're not the crude brute that you used to be. And the world may not recognize that, but your own higher self recognizes that. And that's all that is important. Not that the world recognizes it, but that your own higher nature recognizes it. And then you work out of that new state of being. And that state of being is you're working more from your higher nature, from your divine nature. So the placidity of mind If your mind is agitated, I think of an ocean that's stormy. You can relate that as a metaphor to an agitated mind. Your mind is stormy, lots of thinkings, and the thoughts are of different negativities. Well, one person might make you angry. One person might cause you to become elated. Another a situation might happen and you feel stupid. Another situation happens and you feel bright and smart on yourself. Your mind is, I think you're thinking about what you have to do over here. Your mind is stormy. It's like the wind that is whipping up the ocean. And that is fertile ground for the negative emotions. But if your mind was to become placid, calm, like the ocean on a calm day where there's hardly a wave to be seen, I'm going to use a superhero terminology now. That is kryptonite to the negative emotions. That is kryptonite to the sabal, the enemies. They can't tolerate that kind of mind, that kind of state of mind. It will not work. That is not the fertile ground for that. And how you get the placid mind is that you have to meditate a lot to get your mind calm. There's no way around it. And actually, when you start meditating in the beginning, it appears to be difficult, and it can be difficult, especially if you have a very agitated mind. But after a while, your mind becomes calm. You start to enjoy meditation, and you come to I don't want to use the word addicted, because it's not really an addiction. You come to desire, and it's a positive desire. You come to desire the meditative experience more than your time and space awake experience. You'll be working and you'll be wishing in the back of your mind, wish I could be meditating now. Because in your meditation, things are more calm, they're more relaxed, you're experiencing deeper aspects of yourself, and you may be experiencing the astral plane. In the astral plane, things are more clean, and you're swirling around in the astral plane with a powerful body, which is your ka body. And so there's more thrill. There's more thrill and enjoyment and things like that. So you come to desire that more than you do the physical world. And that is because in there things are more calm. Out here, things are more agitated. With agitated people, agitated circumstances, agitated conditions, agitated weather. No hurricane is going to strike you in the astral plane. You don't have to worry about boarding up your house and things like that. And if you're like me, you have to take care of two homes. You have to take care of your own home, then you have to go and take care of your sister's home, because she's going to be calling you. What can you do? So you come to actually enjoy that more. And that gets you to the place where you have caused the sebao to fall to the ground. And then when they're to the ground, and you can stand on them. And once you put your foot on them, they can't move. You have them under your full control. And in that way, you develop a strong capacity for spiritual insight into the true nature of yourself. And that's what it's all about. And you'll find yourself, family may start to, you you may start to, I'm gonna put this one, you start to see the flaws in others. So you have to remain humble, and you have to remain kind, and you have to remain patient and compassionate, because you were that way once too. So you'll see the flaws in your friends. You'll see the flaws in your family. You'll see the flaws in your spouse, and that's a big one. And what are you going to do about that? And so you start to identify the pollution of the world, how the world is polluted, and how people are messed up, and what gets you through that. Especially in the very beginning, it can be a little jolting, and you may start to, what happens is you start to recede. You don't want to be around them, you don't want to be around that, but you have to get over that, because you have to learn to integrate. So you have to be able to demonstrate patience and compassion for a leper, maybe someone is sick and their body don't smell good, or someone whose mind don't smell good. Now, how do you know someone's mind doesn't smell good? Is by how they are, how they act. Maybe cussing all the time and yelling all the time and angry all the time. So their mind is polluted with negativity. And in the beginning, you may develop an aversion to that, because your vision of the negativities, the Sebal, will become more clear. So in the past, someone might do something and you might laugh it off, oh, da, 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 da. And now you're seeing it and you're recognizing it for a negative trait or a negative principle in a person's personality. And if you're in a relationship, then that can cause tension in the relationship from the perspective of you may want them to change and to become like you. And if they don't change and become like you, then how long can the relationship be sustained? And if you're very serious, then there will be trouble. And then you'll start to, especially in the very early stages, the world will seem messed up and polluted, and like when you start to see all your warts and your pimples, you start to see all the pimples of the world, and that can cause you aversion. But that is a phase. You don't remain there all the time. You shouldn't remain there all the time. What I mean by that is that you won't mix up, you won't mix with it, but you will not be repulsed by it. It won't cause you irritation or anxiety, because you'll be operating from a deeper place of insight. But you're not going to, if someone offers you an alcoholic drink, you're not going to take it, but you're not going to look down on them for them taking it. Because you're going to remember, well, I used to do that too at one point, and then I grew up, I recognized that, I needed to change to grow spiritually. So that's me, but they're still there, and that's okay. In due time, they'll move out of that too. And you have to recognize that they won't move out of that maybe in your lifetime. So you have to give people space. and recognize that people cannot grow outside of their capacity. So there's nothing that you can do that can force someone to grow or to change or to become transformed. That's their work to do, like it's your work to do as well. It would be nice if if your spouse or your friends or your family come along with you, but that rarely happens. It doesn't. And in certain relationships, we find that if one person turns to the teaching and the other person doesn't turn to the teaching, if the person who doesn't turn to the teaching does not become resentful or is accepting of the person that did turn to the teaching, then the relationship can work, it can last. If the person who has turned to the teaching doesn't pressure the partner to change. So, like in all relationships, there has to be a balance struck and a compromise and an understanding and compassion and true love. And what is love? Love means understanding, and love actually means that the relationship is not about you, it's about the other person. And it is about you from the perspective, it is about you, but it's not really about you. It is about you because you're in it and you don't want to be in an unhealthy relationship. And but it's not about you in the sense that it's about the relationship and it's about the other. So it's about serving the other and giving to the other and sublimating one's egoism in relation to the other. From the perspective of, and so that the relationship is designed actually to help you to actually grow spiritually. That is what a relationship is designed for. But modern relationships are not constructed that way because of modern culture, etc. So if and this is the idea of the troubadours in the Western culture was a, uh, a sort of a revolution against the church in medieval Europe. Because in medieval Europe, people were Catholics. And they believed, and they actually did do this, that marriages could only be sanctioned by the church. And there were marriages that were, set up, designed. And then the troubadour idea came along. That was a rebellion against the church, in which the person-to-person love developed in medieval Europe, where it was no longer the arrangement of a marriage, but it was the meeting of the eyes. When you meet someone that you love, etc., and then you get into a relationship, and so forth. But that development in medieval Europe of the person-to-person love has largely become a failure and we know that because of the divorce rate. And that's because people are going about it through the romantic idea of the troubadour idea, which was a rebellion against the church. I'm not saying that the church was all good, I'm saying that this is how it developed. In ancient Egypt, a relationship was it was understood that it could be temporary. So people could come together and break up at any time, and it wasn't big whole thing, and you know, if you get married, you have to stay married, and all this kind of craziness. And the reason why, because it's understood that the RU of two people can be temporary, especially if one is growing within the teaching and the other is not, then the relationship can be temporary. And the reason why the relationship is temporary is because then the person who's growing spiritually can recognize the sabao in the relationship, the themes in the relationship. So they grow out of it. They grow into something else. So all of that to say that when a person is growing spiritually, you start to recognize all the themes. It affects almost all areas of your life if you look at it in that way. But it's really, all areas of your life is really one total creation of your mind, your aria that you've produced. And so you have to recognize the sabao, to grow beyond them within yourself. And when you recognize them in others, it's compassion and understanding, and not holding it against them, etc. Why? Because you used to be there once, but now you have grown into a new place. But if you can recognize them in the world, it means that your mind is reflecting to you what the world is, and then you reflect that back to yourself. And the process for someone who is serious is that you don't like seeing it in the world, so you don't like seeing it in yourself. So you work to eradicate it within yourself without eating your heart, without self-recrimination, etc. Okay. Now, one other thing. It's getting late, so I'll just say one or two words about it. But we have I'm teaching many different classes from different areas of the philosophy, which is you have to have a certain kind of acuity, skill, wisdom, and knowledge of the teaching to do. It's something that it's not easy to do. And today as well, spiritual students ask, or they might get confused about all the different classes that are being taught, and they're thinking about how to bring them all together. But you don't want to do that in the very beginning, or taking classes such as these in the way that it's being given. You want to try to understand each class within the context of that class alone. So in the Behudet, you're trying to understand the Behudet from the Behudet perspective without thinking about what's going on in the net class or what's going on in the Amdua class. When you're in the Amdua class, you're thinking about the Amdua from that perspective without what's going on in the Behudet class. And I know in certain classes, I draw inferences from other classes because it's easy. It's easy for someone like me, but for the new mind that is coming into it, if you're trying to do that, it can cause confusion because of the nuances and intricacies. So try to look at each class from their own perspective, from their own side, without thinking about how to mesh them together and how they relate and things like that. And that's why in ancient times, you have the different schools, the different theologies. And so what seems to have happened with me is that I'm able to see the interconnectivity with all of them and to work with all of them. But that's very advanced. So if a student is trying to do that, can cause confusion. So the best way to handle that is to relate to each class individually like that, instead of trying to put and mesh them all together, and that can cause confusion. Okay. So that issue came up today, so I just wanted to express that to everyone. Are there any questions about that? Well, Sarma, do you want to say anything about that?
Hoja, Dua. No particular commentary, although I do agree around the need to keep the classes sort of distinct so as not to, or not trying to sort of meld all of the different concepts, as it can become confusing and overwhelming, and sort of trying to identify or select if there's a particular class or path um, that is in alignment, either with your tutelary or your course or choice of practice, then that may be where you place your primary emphasis in terms of practice, or your meditation practice. Again, so as to stay sort of on a focused path of depth, at least with the meditation.
Okay.
And I appreciate your insights around the relationships and effort.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to keep things, I think you use the right word, distinct. To try to keep things distinct, like what's going on in this class, that try to keep that and focus with what's going on in that class. And when you go to the other class, try not to bring what is in that class into the other class, and just focus on that in that way. And then when you're thinking about which one of the classes to use as a primary one, then that's the one that you can focus on really intensively. And then the others you use for your knowledge, to broaden your knowledge and your understanding of the philosophy. Yeah, these philosophies are vast. And on top of that, doing the medicine class as well. So it's how it's being done. It's very advanced. It's very I guess advanced is the best word. It's a very high level, and people shouldn't think that because I do it that they have to be compelled to be able to think in that way as well. So, the Aru from past lifetimes and things coming to fore. So, okay. All right. And one last thing. Oh, well, it's getting late, so we'll talk about that another day. So we'll close out for tonight. Makiru ba nebijer duara sara senteru heru makiru om hetep 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 hetep. Do everyone until we meet again. Hetep.